Agenda item 1, presentation of the Laurel Bowie Road, audit by Century Engineering. Director Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Smith, Mayor Moe, council members, and extended board members that are here. Today, for the presentation, first, I'd like to tell you about the group that we're excited about this project of the Bowie Road Safety Audit and the group very briefly. The main presenter will be Neil Robinson with Century. Also, we'll have Janie Nam with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, myself and Christy Fong. With that, I will pass it to Janie Nam first, and then she will pass it to Neil Robinson for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to join your work session tonight. On behalf of COG, we are very pleased to come together with the City of Laurel and Century Engineering on this important project to improve safety along Bowie Road. It is exactly the type of project that the Regional Roadway Safety Program seeks to fund. Bowie Road falls within one of our region's equity emphasis areas and also serves many purposes for its surrounding communities. It's a place for employment, commerce, and also where many people call home. Bringing safety improvements along this corridor would have a positive impact on many lives, and it's a privilege for us to support this work. And we thank the city for proposing it and being such a great partner in improving safety in our region. Thank you. And I'll pass things off to Neil.
Thank you, Jenny. Good evening, City Council members, Mr. Mayor, and everyone else present. It really is an honor to be a part of this project. And as I share my screen, I'll just jump right on in and talk about what the project entails. So can everyone see the screen right now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So as Jenny mentioned, the road safety audit, it's a part of a broader effort by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, just to look within its region and identify roadway segments that have issues. And then we put together a really proficient team to see how we can address those issues in a meaningful way that promotes safety overall. So we have been working hand in glove with COG, also with Brian and Christy and their team. And the basic approach that we've taken and that I'll present here today is just looking at our overall team, giving you a basic synopsis, looking at the summary of the project or approach to the study or findings and recommendations. And we'll focus heavily on the recommendations. It will be a bit of a slog, but there's some really meaningful things that we found and things that could potentially be implemented. So our team just quickly comprised of Century Engineering, and we had T3 Design, who was our primary data collection sub-consultant. We've worked hand in glove with them over the years on several projects, but for this effort, they focused on taking traffic counts and also providing speed data along the segment. In tandem with working with T3, we also worked closely with the mayor's office, with, as I mentioned, Brian and Christy and their team at DPW. We engaged the police department, fire department, ECD, just to see what's happening from a planning standpoint throughout the region, and COG, naturally, with Janie and her team, and also with MDOT SHA District 3 in particular, because their district really intersects and includes the city. So briefly, this shows the segment of Bowie Road in question, and it runs from the northern region with US 1, Washington Boulevard, and then meanders down towards Laurel Bowie Road. And we looked at the entire segment, we walked the segment, and we assessed it as a part of this road safety audit. So it's a 0.7 mile segment. It's signed at 25 miles per hour. There have been complaints about high speeds, and which in part triggered this study. There are no shoulders. It's a part of the bike master plan route. Multiple land uses in the area, and there's also a volunteer fire rescue station along the limits in the vicinity of Lafayette. There was a pedestrian focus some years ago where a study was performed, and we found that there was a significant number of pedestrians when we looked over a 24-hour period. This wasn't a study that Century was a part of, but as a background investigation prior to performing the study, we sought some of this data. There was some sidewalk installation, and then there was an traffic signal upgrade at Lafayette. The study, as I mentioned before, was triggered by residents' complaints about speeding. There was a lot of damage to road boxes, and we'll talk a little about that further along. We noted a number of crashes, 112 crashes since 2019. And there was some limited some increased, I should say, police enforcement during that period and coming out of some of the work that was done. But overall, our goal today is really, or with the study, was to address the safety issues and to improve the safety of the roadway for all users, whether you're talking motorists, vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and any vulnerable road users. And ultimately, we're moving towards reducing the fatalities and bringing those numbers down to zero. So we took a traditional approach adopted by the Federal Highway Administration, where we identified the project. A lot of that occurred prior to us delving into the study, but the project was identified through collaboration with DPW and COG. The roadway segment was identified. And then once Century and our team got involved, we started forming a road safety audit team. We were looking at the available data so we could do a tabletop assessment to have an idea of what was happening out there before we actually went into the field. And then from there, it was really pulling together a tech memo to show what our findings were. And then with the field review, we took a really comprehensive team, multidisciplinary team to the field, highway engineers, traffic engineers, stormwater management experts, safety experts, just to see what the conditions were, the geometrics and the traffic operations, so we could get a better understanding of what was happening. And then ultimately, here we are presenting to the council, and we'll finalize our findings and report. So very quickly, this kind of reiterates those steps that I had mentioned, just identifying the project and going all the way through the measures that we're recommending to mitigate some of the safety concerns that are there. The RSA approach really looks at a variety of things from an engineering standpoint, from an operations standpoint, and a safety standpoint. So we look at signalized intersections, for example, see how those operate, look at the timing of those intersections. We look at overall traffic control devices, whether we're talking signals, signing, pavement marking, lighting, and just to see what the adequacy or inadequacy of those are. Looked at storm drain systems. We also looked at roadside, any clear zones, so that any itinerant vehicles could really get corrected and come back on the roadway if they diverted from the roadway. So we looked at a variety of things from an engineering standpoint and also from an operations standpoint, and followed, as I said, the Federal Highway Administration's guide towards what items we needed to focus on to get to our ultimate goal of identifying the problem. So just jumping in, we performed 2 field visits. So one was during a peak period, and we did that visit during the AM peak period from around 6 a.m. all the way through 9 a.m. and a little beyond. And then we also performed another field visit where we captured that midday period, midday into early afternoon before the evening peak came about, because that would give us an unskewed look, an untarnished look at what was really happening. One could say that if we went during peak periods, when there was a lot of traffic, then our inclination would be just to focus on the heavy traffic volumes around that time, heavy pedestrian volumes and bicycle uses. So this was a way of really balancing our outlook. And to be honest with you, it's during the off-peak periods where the volumes aren't high and the traffic isn't dense, that's where you would find an inclination for motorists to speed as well. So we wanted to see some of those parameters as well. So generally, and this now speaks to the findings and some of the recommendations. And we started at that northern segment by Route 1 and worked our way farther south towards Maryland 197. And in a general sense, the roadways signed for 25 miles an hour posted speed limit. But we did a speed study between the segments between US 1 and Lafayette, and then also another speed study from Lafayette down to 197. So what you're looking here at item 1 really are the speeds that we found. And I'll just distill that a bit. So we looked at the 85th percentile speeds, which are the speeds that 85% and less and fewer of the vehicles are traveling at that speed. We also looked at the maximum speed that was reported during that period and then the average speeds. So for that northern segment, as you look the eastbound direction, if you're moving from Route 1 heading towards Lafayette, we had an 85th percentile speed of 38 miles per hour, maximum speed of 65 miles per hour, and an average speed of 32 miles per hour. All of those significantly exceeded the 25 mile per hour posted speed limit. And if you were to follow that explanation throughout, on the same northern segment, but going from Lafayette towards Route 1, we have that 85th percentile speed of 37 miles per hour, a maximum speed of 55 miles per hour, and the average speed of 31. So consistently you saw where speeds exceeded the posted speed limit. And then for the second section, it was 32 for the 85th percentile, 59 for the max, and then at least the average speeds more or less mirrored or came closer towards the posted speed limit. So some of the other things that we found was a lot of vegetation encroaching on the sidewalks, and that presents a problem because when you have pedestrians traveling the sidewalk, and especially someone who is wheelchair bound, the vegetation will get in the way, and you'll find even encroaching onto the roadway, which creates a safety hazard. We did find trash, which is not a safety issue per se, but it certainly is unsightly. But the trash, some of the trash we found too, and debris presented problems for, or could potentially present problems for pedestrians. So along the first location, and I'm going to quickly run through about 11 different locations, right? So bear with me here. On the first location, which is that segment between the one-way pairs, there's no sidewalk along the northern side. And we saw pedestrians cutting through the parking lot to the north there, but there were also persons who were inclined to come within the roadway. Again, another safety issue. So a suggestion is to really narrow that roadway width there, that extra wide lane as you're heading north or heading west, to create a sidewalk and a safe pedestrian path. It comes with its engineering challenges because you have to deal with storm drain issues and so forth. But that's one solution. There's no intersection lighting, and lighting is key from a safety standpoint for both vehicles and pedestrians. And so even though that signal is not maintained by the city, the recommendation is to talk with the state, have a discussion with the state to improve that. Trees and shrubs, those are issues as well. We saw where there was no signing or street name signs, and some do not enter signs were misaligned. And so those things cause confusion to motorists, especially unfamiliar motorists in the area. So the images I'm showing here is a sidewalk where you have brush encroaching on the sidewalk. There's a segment here which is actually farther to the south where there's a pinch point. There's a manhole that the sidewalk was built around that. So in instances like that, you'll find people tending to encroach onto the roadway to get by, especially if you have a lot of pedestrian traffic there. We found areas where there was jaywalking. There's a break in the fence. I don't think it was a break by design, but it's persons have broken through just so they could cross and jaywalk, again, a safety hazard. So location one, that kind of sums it up, what we found. But we also found some crashes in that location where we're suggesting some signing, some affirmative signing along Route 1 to help avoid some of these sideswipe crashes. And I circled here, and you can see that intersection, Route 1 and Bowie Road. And if you were to head south on Route 1 in the far left lane, that's where we're implementing, suggesting some pavement marking and signing changes. So just quickly going through the second location at US 1 northbound and Bowie Road, based on the crash pattern there and observing the signal operation and the signal timing, the all red signal phase was just short. It was less than 1 second. And so you'll find motorists will be inclined to jump that signal even before the opposing movement has gotten a chance to go through. And that we found to be an issue. So again, working collaboratively with the state, we could address some of these issues. And signing becomes an issue as well, and as well as the accessibility for the push buttons, some of them marked with graffiti. And this just shows the location that I was just talking about, the at 2nd Street and Bowie Road. So as we move farther to the south, we found that this kind of talks about the same location. So I'll move along. We did find that at that location, the northern leg of the intersection, there's no marked crosswalk there. And there is a lot of jaywalking to get across Route 1. And you can see in the distance there, there's someone who is actually crossing an unsafe situation. So some pavement markings could really help to improve safety in that location. And it's low cost as well. As we move farther along to the shopping area, there were a lot of issues. We found some crashes in that location, but I just want to focus on the lack of sidewalk on the northern side, on the plaza side. And we found quite a bit of jaywalking there. There was a footpath, and you could see trampled down. And because of the jaywalking, you have more than the desired interaction with pets and vehicles. Something to note is that we did perform a visit during the rain time, and we found areas in that location where there was ponding. So we're recommending also that inlets be looked at and cleaned out if necessary to reduce any ponding. But the sidewalk stood out as a major issue there. Here is a recreational place, if you will, within that plaza. And as you approach it from the south or from the east, heading in that direction, you lose sidewalk altogether. So that's an area also where we could improve the pedestrian path, take them out of the roadway. Here's a footpath that I mentioned. Depending on the right-of-way availability, that's somewhere that we could potentially install sidewalk and take persons from off the roadway. So we also found, heading back to Lafayette, overhead utility lines were there, and some had a lot of brush and overgrowth on them. And there were instances where some of the signs that would provide guidance to motorists were covered. So location 4, the main thing, if I were to pull that out, is at the storage, the public storage area, where some work was recently done. There was repaving of that area with PCC concrete pavement. We had some pavement markings which were white, and ostensibly they were white on white. So it did not pop out to motorists to let them be more aware of pedestrians in the roadway. So that's something that we'd put more patterned, preformed pavement markings that provide contrast, and it should be visible to motorists. And also just emphasize that going under the bridge, it's a one-way roadway. So there would be signing to alert motorists to the nature of the roadway, the narrow nature of the roadway as they go. We found some signs from previous work there that were no longer relevant to the operations of the intersection. When there was a detour in place, some of those signs are still there. And so a recommendation is just to make sure that the city goes through and everything is appropriate for the operations. The location 5, it's at the Volunteer Rescue Squad. And just some key things to pull out at that location is right by the driveway for the VRS. It's just one large open area, which does not provide positive guidance for pets who are crossing that area. So simple treatment, we would install pavement markings there to provide a direct pathway so that persons don't feel that they're just walking out in the open. There were areas on the north side where we saw W-beam traffic barriers, which the length of need seemed inadequate for the roadway, and especially with the speeds that we discovered there. There's a fence, a chain link fence there that is right next to an open flow channel. And again, things like traffic barriers up against or close enough to that area where we don't have a sufficient clear zone for recovery. Those are some measures that could be put in place as well. Here, I mentioned the chain link fence coming up to that area. Beyond there, there's the open flow channel, a concrete channel, which if you have an itinerant vehicle, it definitely is going through the chain link fence and going over there. So as we head farther south to the apartments, Summerlin Apartments, we saw quite a bit of activity in that location with respect to the school bus coming out. A lot of students were there, some parents. And something that was noteworthy that we observed was the sight distance was blocked because of trees that came over on the sidewalk. So not only did it block the sight distance for vehicles exiting, but persons walking along the sidewalk, especially if you were tall, those trees would get in your way. So tree trimming, simple measures could be put in place to mitigate that. But in tandem with the sight distance problems, as drivers exited these side streets, there was really a challenge in getting out with the high speeds on the roadway. So something simple that we're suggesting even along the entire corridor would be to implement or install edge line pavement markings. So you would not have shoulders, but the edge line markings throughout would essentially narrow or shrink the lane widths. And with the shrinking, the reaction of motorists through studies that you adjust your speeds to conform with a narrow path that you're traveling. So some of those are some measures that we have sought that would or deemed would be reasonable for implementing. Having brakes in the double yellow line as we get to some intersections, that also presents a visual cue for drivers that there's an intersecting roadway as opposed to the straight solid yellow lines. So we're going, I'm going on and on, but I hope essentially you kind of get the picture that I'm painting here. These segments have high speeds. We also have inadequate pedestrian facilities on both sides of the roadway. Where we have sidewalks on one side, there are pinch points, several pinch points where you have mailboxes in the way, mailboxes that have been hit in the past, reinstalled, hit again. And then you have residents in that area crossing the roadway without any proper means of crossing, no controlled way of crossing. And so at some of these locations, even farther to the north, in the vicinity of the shopping center, and then within this vicinity as well, Laurel Pines, an installation of a rectangular rapid flashing beacon could be a potential measure to draw the attention of speeding motorists. because you have jaywalking, and that's not something that we can stop that easily. And so we go on and on. I mentioned the opening in the fence before, the double yellow lines. We do have some speed measure, like a digital display of your speed installed there, but there's nothing that indicates what your speed ought to be. So simple measures like that, we feel will go even a far way in helping to reduce the speeds that we encounter. There's an opening in the fence, someone just sauntering across the roadway, definite safety issue, which involve pedestrians. Pinch points, I mentioned that before, overgrown trees, debris across the roadway. Here I'm showing you some pinch points caused by mailboxes. There was a location where we found a mailbox that was oriented differently because it got hit so many times, and it allowed for an additional space, and every little matters in this case. Here's an area that I showed an image of before, where there's a pinch point caused by a manhole in that location. So essentially, as we walked the corridor, we found quite a bit of issues. And what we are doing right now, as you can see from this matrix that we presented, is we're seeing what the issues are. We're going to go through with Brian and Christy just to say, all right, which ones we identify as priorities that we certainly need to address immediately or in the short term, who the responsibility falls upon, whether it's a city, whether it's a state, so then we can put measures in place to have them addressed. And then develop an action plan, if you will, to start having some of these measures implemented, all with the overarching goal of increasing safety, reducing the accident experience, for want of a better term, along the roadway. And especially even here, as you see at Maryland 197, there are a total of 20 crashes reported, over a 3-year period. It's really high. And there is anecdotal evidence that something is happening along there, both Bowie Road and Maryland 197. Because I'll come back to this, but there were some downed signs while we were there. So you can see vehicles are getting more and more itinerant. They're running off the roadway, knocking down signs. And as a part of the effort that we've been doing, we actually called in with the state and put in tickets with the state as a part of their SOP if there's an issue on roadways that they maintain, so that they can follow through and right some of the deficiencies that are there. So even with this sign, that two-way sign that you see on the left-hand side, that's something that we submitted a ticket with SHA District 3 about, for them to come and address that. And so we anticipate that the city can follow up with the state in writing some of these issues. So overall, this is location 11. We're at the end of our project limit. And, in addition to some of the pavement markings that we saw there, or that we're recommending for these locations, we saw damage to guardrails as well. And we saw areas where the length of need for a guardrail could be increased, so that for vehicles that ran off the road, they would be actually redirected back onto the roadway and be of less danger to persons on sidewalks and just off on the roadside. So with that having been said, what are the next steps? We certainly will compile all of this information into a final report. We will continue working with the DPW, with Brian and Christy, just to prioritize some of these observations that were made and some of the recommendations as well. And then that will all be compiled for, additional action down the line. So with that, I basically summarized what our team did And if you have any questions, I look forward to providing you with responses as best I can.
Thank you, Neil. President Smith, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much for that. Any questions or comments from the council before we move forward?
I just have one, Councilor Smith. When do you project that the final report will be done, and will you provide a copy of that to each member of the council?
Okay, so the final report, we are working with COG to see when that's needed. The project actually, the funding for the project ended the end of June. But because we wanted to present here, the work actually has extended to where we are now. So I am thinking that 2 weeks, I'll have to confirm with COG and with Brian that the turnaround could potentially be in about a couple of weeks to get the information to the team for vetting and for, you know, making any comments, final changes before a decision is made about the distribution.
Councilmember DeWall, if you'll allow me, I will get with my team in the CA's office to get you a better date of when that will be with that. So I'll have Christy to work on that, and then we'll try to get you a better date through the CA's office, if that's okay, sir.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love the, I mean, it's a lot of stuff to absorb right now, and I would love to have it in front of me to look at even more in depth. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any more questions from the council?
Mr. President, I have a comment.
Sure, go ahead, Councilman Cole.
So I was following along in the presentation with Google Street View just to see what was going on. And the pictures that were presented in the report on the vegetation do not compare to the summertime photos that are on Google Street View. I would think one of the things we could do pretty quickly is send code enforcement along to enforce some of the vegetation stuff, at least within the city limits. Just have them maintain the property like they're supposed to. That's all, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Councilman Cole. And I take it the rest of the count, there's Councilman Sidnor or Mitchell, do you have any comments? All right. Thank you for that, Councilman Cole. We're gonna move forward to agenda item number 2. We have the Safe Streets and Roads for All SS4A Grants Program, the traffic group. Deputy City Administrator Joanne Barr, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mayor, Council members. I just want to introduce tonight Ms. Renata Habercam and Wes Guckert of the Traffic Group, who are going to be providing a presentation on federal grant money available for road safety projects. And some of you may have run into them or spoken to them at the MML conference. So we're very happy to have them here tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Renata.
Hi, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Guckert because he's going to start the presentation. Nice to
Great.
meet you all.
Thank you, Mayor, Council President, and other members of the council. I'm not sure how much time you want me to take, and I want to be respectful of your time. I do not want to drone on and on about this program. This is a program that came out of the infrastructure bill, the famous infrastructure bill, and it's called Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A. And it is a program that is really tied directly to what some of you may have heard before called Vision Zero. And that's where state roads, county roads, municipal roads are looking to reduce fatalities to zero. Zero excuses, zero deaths. And this grant program that the federal government has put out there, as of right now, has a very, very short time frame in order to apply for a grant to do the very first step. And what I'd like to do, if you tell me, Mr. President, how much time would you like me to take on this? I really want to be respectful of your schedule this evening.
Yeah, yeah, about as much time as you need, but if you could compile it, that'd be great.
Okay, I will keep it as short as I can without going without cutting things out. And I can always provide this presentation directly to Joanne and or to whoever else may want it, Mr. President. Let me take and share my screen if I could, please. And I'll go through this situation. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, then. So what I would like to do is let this load, and I'll go through some details of what this program is about. I'm going to ask Renata at a couple of places to interject and talk about a few of the things that are going on. But what we have found is that municipalities around the world really are finding wild success with Vision Zero processes. And there's really three guiding principles of Vision Zero. One is health equity, and to eliminate disadvantages on communities that really are underserved by safe roads, to identify where and why accidents are happening, which is really a data-driven process, and then to be to make sure that the municipality provides transparency. We need to, the community really needs to commit to a systematic elimination of traffic deaths, dealing with cars and bikes and peds, and describe objectives and actions to enhance safety. As an example, even in New York City, they've had a Vision Zero program for 8 years now, and their traffic fatalities have declined by 28% overall in pedestrian fatalities, and overall a 45% reduction in fatalities. So what it is that we're talking about just plain works. And this would encompass the entire city of Laurel with the purpose of eliminating traffic-related fatalities. This really is a Vision Zero, if you don't know it, is really an international movement. And it's really a new approach to safety. It's really applying system-wide practices and policies with really the goal of lessening the severity of collisions. You heard the last speaker from Century Engineering talk about the very, very high number of accidents, over 100 accidents occurring along just that one section of roadway. And while he didn't talk about, as I recall, the number of fatalities, nevertheless, I guarantee you there have been some very, very severe collisions that have occurred that really, through his program that he's talking about, a road safety audit, and implementing the processes that he talked about. That's what we're talking about for all the streets within within Laurel. Overview of funding is that there's money available for action plan. There's money available for implementation, which is much, much larger. This is an 80-20 program where it's 80% federal money, 20% local money. And then you go through a program where you're trying to decide whether or not which grant is right for your community. And in this particular case, it's my understanding that Laurel does not yet have an action plan. So the first step would be to apply for an action plan grant. The implementation process is one where you learn about the grant program and how to apply webinars. You find out if you're eligible. You determine if you're looking for a 20%. If you're able to participate in 20% match, you prepare the application, you submit the application, and you receive award. Renata, why don't you talk for a moment about the how to apply for the grants as a general overview, please? And you're on mute.
All right, is that better?
Good, thank you.
When Wes provides you with a copy of this presentation, that underlined June 13th webinar recording, that's actually a link that will take you to that recording. I'm going to pop out of here a second so I can go to the actual site. Okay.
You want me to stop sharing?
No, you don't have to do that. I'm doing it for my own reference.
Okay.
First and foremost, the city of Laurel would have to be registered with sam.gov. I don't know whether or not you are or not, but that would be the very first step. You will then be issued a UEI number, which is replacing the DUNS number that SAM used to use for their entities. UEI stands for Unique Entity Identifier. So that would be your first step, getting one of those numbers. And then you would visit grants, grants.gov, and I will follow up with an email with all the links to the various pages that will be of great help to you. But first I would suggest that you start by going through the webinars that they are providing, the SS4A is providing. They're very comprehensive. They're about an hour and a half each, but they're very, very detailed and will make the process much smoother, much easier for you. You would then go to grants.gov, and here you can search for grants. You can get started and start applying for your grant. They have a support center, and in the support center, there is a grants learning center. There's online help where they will actually hold your hand through the process. And there is applicant training. And what's great about the applicant training is it has a step-by-step video of how to create the workspace that you will have to create, which is the format. The workspace is the format for actually applying for the grant, online platform. Because you will have to assign roles for various individuals who are going to be involved in the application process. It's one of those platforms. I have to certify the traffic group through the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs for our service disabled veteran-owned small business certification. And it's one of those platforms where, you know, you go page by page by page, you fill out what they need you to fill out, upload what they need you to upload, and only then can you proceed to the next page. And because you have to assign roles, you'll have to choose people who will have access to this platform because it is password protected. And, you know, some people might have the role of uploading all the financial information.
Yeah, and as you can tell, Mr. President, free money is not free easy.
It's never, yeah,
and although government will tell you, federal government will tell you that they've got this grant program, it simply takes time and effort in order to get the money that we're talking about. I mean, there's a selection criteria where you describe the safety problem, the impact, you look at underserved communities, you've got to have meaningful engagement, you've got to work with community reps, and you go through a process of, and then ultimately looking at climate change and sustainability. And what we will send to you if you remain interested after understanding what it takes to get the money, is an action plan scope, because the very first step is for you to get the money, or to do it yourself, quite frankly, to have an action plan that will lay out what it is that you're going to do for your community and how it's going to be done, the actions that you're going to take to get to zero fatality. So that took about 15 minutes, Mr. President. I really think that if there remains interest by the city in moving forward with applying for the grant, we can certainly come and spend some time in person with your team, whoever that may be, to try to help get them started. But as Renata indicated, this really is an application that needs to be filled out by the city, because there's a lot of detail that someone in the city needs to fill in for the grant application. On the other hand, you could begin yourself without applying for a grant for the action plan. Do the action plan preparation of the plan yourself, and then the plan will then move forward into an implementation program where you apply for a much larger grant to do all of the safety initiatives that will be needed to address the Vision Zero condition.
What's important to understand is that, unfortunately, and unless we learn otherwise, grant applications have to be in by September 15th, which is a very short window. Questions, August 15th. So if this is something that the city of Laurel is interested in, you'll kind of need to get started very soon. We're already what? We're July. Before you know it, it's September 15th. It's right around the corner.
And so we're ready to assist. As you, some of you may know, Laurel is near and dear to our heart and has always been for a long time. And so we'll be happy to assist in whatever way we can. I think that regardless of the grant, this is an opportunity for the city to stand out and to create an action plan to get to a Vision Zero condition. And that'll do. And any questions, Mr. President?
Any questions from the council? Like there's none. Thank you for that presentation.
Francis, I do have one question real quick.
Okay. Go ahead, Mayor Mo.
The does the CIP have anything to do with the process of the action plan, or is that just
No, sir.
entirely different?
Entirely different. The CIP being the state or the county capital improvement program.
Yeah.
The action plan, it would be a document that would detail how you're going to get from point A to point B before doing an implementation program to implement the things that are necessary, Mayor, in order to make your town as safe as possible. Interesting that Century Engineering talked about the 85th percentile speed. And as you may be aware, government for years and years, for 100 years, has looked at speed limits based upon the 85th percentile speed. There are communities all over the world that are doing maximum uniform speeds of 20, 25, 30 miles an hour. And because we know that speed is the biggest killer. Now that may sound a bit trite, but indeed, if you are a pedestrian, you get hit by a car at 20 miles an hour, you got probably a 90 or 95% chance of survival. You raise that to 40 miles an hour and the numbers flip. you got about a 10 or 15% chance of survival. And so one of the things that the action plan would do is to spend time with Public Works, spend time with the police department, understanding, in addition to reviewing all accident data, understanding where problems exist. And, traffic engineers historically, and departments of Public Works historically have felt the obligation to move traffic as fast as it can. Well, that's counterintuitive when you're trying to make your road safe. And so this program really is completely different and has been successful worldwide in order to get communities, to make communities, drivers, passengers, pedestrians, bicyclists, much, much safer.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any more questions from anyone else on the council?
I got one, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Councilman DeWalt.
Wes, I chair the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. And do you have anything that doesn't go on very long, maybe 20 minutes max, of the goals of what Vision Zero is, and all the statistics, anything that I could provide with my members that would
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And in fact, we have made Vision Zero presentations to various organizations around the country. So I will send you a Vision Zero slide deck that will give you a lot of information about Vision Zero, what it's for. At the same time, Councilman, I will also send you a scope of work for the action plan. But I have lots of information that I can share with you, and we will send it directly to you, your email, if that's what you would like.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We will handle that.
Mr. President, if I could throw something out,
Sure,
I
man.
talked to Wes and them down in Ocean City, and one of the things I was thinking about where we started the traffic, citywide traffic analysis, that may be something that we might want to try to pick up on, and I think that'll fit the Vision Zero as well, if I'm not mistaken, part of it. But I think we would like to try to get some sense of, if you're interested in trying to go in after a grant, we'd like to try to partner with the traffic group to see if we can get this done in time and to work on some funding. And maybe there's ways that we can find some money or grants to finish up what we started on the other sections of when we talk about the traffic and the speeding and the other issues we've been dealing with. So I just wanted to throw that out and get some reaction. Thank you. Thanks, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. President, the difference, this grant program, typically these grants come through places like COG, or they come through MDOT. This is one that's directly with the federal government, which is probably why it's as complicated as it may be. But we would certainly be willing to work with Laurel, with the mayor, with Councilman DeWalt, yourself, to look at what you've already started, or find a way to review what you've got, make your streets safer. Understanding that comes with safety is also going to come slowing of traffic, and that the council needs to be prepared for constituents who are saying it's going to take me an extra 3 minutes to get home or 5 minutes to get home. That happens all the time, but there has to be intestinal fortitude on elected officials to say this is about the greater good. So I'll be happy to work with you guys for sure.
Thank you. It sounds good. Doesn't seem like the council has too much more
President?
questions on that. Sure, Councilman Cole.
I'd just like to go on to respond to what the mayor said. I would support the administration moving forward with looking into this more to apply for the grant.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Cole. Well, as I was saying, doesn't seem the council has any more questions on it.
Yeah,
But we're pretty.
Mr. President, I'll just
Sure.
say that that Mr. Gucker, you all have my email address, so I could certainly be willing to facilitate getting you whatever information you need and then getting that to the appropriate people on our end.
All right, then we will send information, Joanne, directly to you, and then you can distribute it as you see fit to Councilman DeWalt, the president, or the mayor, or whoever else within the council you feel is appropriate.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for being here tonight.
You bet. My pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Deputy Barr. All right, and we're going to move on to agenda item for the resolution 5-22, which is agenda item 3, a resolution to allow purchases of equipment, vehicles, and support equipment with an acquisition cost of up to $50,000 to be approved by the city administrator for the 18-month period beginning with the adoption of this resolution. Director Saylor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I prepared the resolution. I apologize. I sent it forward without my further discussions with Mr. Taub. We will certainly need to do an actual charter resolution to change this amount. But we still wanted to discuss with you tonight to get your input on what the appetite of the council is as far as amounts or percentages, or if you're even interested in changing the amount from 35,000 to an increased amount for a permanent basis for a charter resolution. I also did want to mention that we found some other places to post our RFPs. There's a state database, it's the eMaryland Marketplace, as well as MML. And I'm working with the IT department to develop a vendor registry so that we can get that information. And when we do have an RFP, the department that's got this going on can be sure to contact directly, send the bid documents to those vendors that have registered with the city. So that's my update for now.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from the council?
Mr. President, I have one.
Sure, Councilman Cole.
So I was reading the resolution and I see that it's temporary. I was pulling some numbers. I had Kim look back at the previous legislation. This has not been changed. The purchasing price has not been changed, I believe, 2013. If you were to do the math, it would, if to get it up to this 50,000 that's requested now, it'd be about 4% a year. That's roughly what inflation is. I'd be in support of changing this to a permanent purchasing limit with a 4% increase every year, or some kind of an increase. That way future councils don't have to adjust this again, but it would help the staff keep up with inflation for purchasing.
Well, if the council agrees to move forward, introduction and first public hearing on resolution 5-22 will be at the mayor and city council meeting on Monday, July 11th, 2022, 6 p.m.
No, Mr. President, if I may.
Sure.
Resolution 522, and let me thank Michelle and Ms. Saylor and all her work and others. I should have caught this long ago. It was my mistake, but as you know, we were trying to do this temporarily to try to help out with the chain, the problems that we're having. We also have these problems, prior to the chain issues that are going on. 522, the way it's written, would be in violation of the charter. We cannot, we kept that on there just to discuss, to see if the council has any appetite of us looking to do a charter amendment or try to make some changes, or even take that out of the charter to all discussions. But if there's no appetite with the council and they want to leave it alone, then we're fine with that. Because once we start a charter amendment, it costs money, there's legal, there's a lot of staff time, and then there'll be a lot of council time to discuss it. So that's why we left it on for your discussion. We would, again, because the charter says it's 35,000, we cannot, even in a temporary, do a resolution to this effect. And Larry picked up on that. And again, it's something that I should have thought of before we started this process. But we were trying to help and move the chain along, the problems with the cars and the other things that we're dealing with. And that's really why it's on here tonight. If there's no appetite, you all don't want us to look at it any further, and even look at what Councilman Cole brought up about maybe a gradual inflation so that we don't have to keep bringing this back to councils. We'll look at that, but we just wanted to get some guidance and where you all are at.
My opinion, I'd say look into Councilman Cole's suggestion. That sounds smart. I'm all about working smarter, not harder. And who knows who will be on the council in the future. And that sounds like a great idea to me. But I'm just one man. But I'd say take a look at that. All right. So
okay, we can. So 522 will not go any further other than tonight for discussion. I think there's some appetite to look at it, so we'll take a look at it. It won't be, I don't think it'll be anything, probably be after you come back, if anywhere, before we have some maybe suggestions and discussions with you all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, moving on to bid recommendation for fleet acquisition, 2022 Ford F-150 Super Cab 4x4, Department of Public Works. Director Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council President Smith, Mayor Moe, and council members. The Department of Public Works is requesting approval for the purchase of a 2022 Ford F-150 Super Cab 4x4 truck to replace fleet that has exceeded its lifespan. The department solicited several quotes, including from vendors on state and county contracts. The accepted quote is from Apple Ford of Columbia, Maryland, who has the Baltimore County contract 0004504 for the purchase of the 2022 F-150 truck. Based on the replacement schedule, the following equipment will be removed from fleet and replaced with the new acquisition. Truck number 741 is a 2009 heavy-duty pickup, which will be replaced with the new 2022 F-150 Super Cab. The quotes were as follows: Coombs of Clarksville, $68,663.40, Apple Ford, $65,306, and Lindsay Ford of Silver Spring, $63,471.36. Funding is available through the adopted FY 2023 CIP reauthorized funds. Recommendation: the accepted bid is not the lowest bid. However, it is the most prudent. Apple Ford has the vehicle in inventory and we can pick it up. And we can take delivery within 2 weeks, and we avoid costly and untimely delays. It is recommended that the purchase of this vehicle for a total cost of $65,306 to Apple Ford of Columbia, Maryland be approved. And I'm available for any more discussion or questions.
Any questions or comments from the council? All right, if the council agrees to move forward, award bid recommendation at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, bid recommendation, fleet acquisition 2022 Ford F-150 Super Duty, Department of Public Works. Director Lee, you have the floor again.
Thank you, President Smith, Mayor, and council members. This is the second bid recommendation for the Ford F-750. The Department of Public Works is requesting approval for purchase of the 2022 Ford F-750 to replace a fleet vehicle that has exceeded its lifespan. The department solicited several quotes, including from vendors on state and county contracts. The accepted quote is from Apple Ford of Columbia, Maryland, who has the Baltimore County contract 0004504 for the purchase of the F-750. Based on a replacement schedule, the following equipment will be removed from fleet and replaced with the new acquisition. Vehicle number 91 is a 1999 state body, which will be replaced with a 2022 Ford F-750 Super Duty. The quotes were as follows, and we only received 2 quotes for this because of the backup of inventory of getting vehicles in. And Apple Ford at 200,367 and Intercon of Joppa at 204,827. Funding is available in the adopted FY 2023 CIP reauthorized funds. It is recommended that the purchase of this vehicle for a total cost of $200,367 to Apple Ford of Columbia, Maryland be approved. And I'm available if you have any more questions about this one also.
Any questions from the council? All right, if the council agrees to move forward, we'll award the bid recommendation at the mayor and city council meeting on Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Moving on to agenda item 6, bid recommendation, Granville Gude Park, path light replacements, Department of Parks and Recs. Director Bailey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mayor, City Council. The Department of Parks and Recreation is requesting approval to purchase new state-of-the-art path lights to replace the existing lights for the Granville Beauty Park. The department has been working with Century Engineering on a project to replace the existing path lights around the 2 lakes with energy efficient and safety featured lights. The project will be done in 2 phases. Phase 1 is the proposal before you, purchasing the lights, and phase 2 will be the installation of new path lights, which will be included in a future bid. Currently, there are 17 high-pressure sodium path lights, and that will be replaced with 46 new LED lights. In addition to replacing existing locations, the new lights will cover areas that were previously unlit, adding additional safety to the large lake. The new lights will feature state-of-the-art poles that can assist with early warning evacuation, emergency calling, air and weather sensors act as incident cameras and announcing, as well as community engagement. The new features will assist with large special events such as July 4th, concerts and movies. The Intel Streets is a patented wireless disruptive technology which allows communication between the individual luminaries in a web-based user interface. Intel Streets is the most effective way to maintain and conserve natural and human resource needed to protect and reduce our carbon footprint. The new poles will offer new safety and security features that the current poles do not. These features include LED indicators, built-in speakers for announcing, emergency call buttons, and direct communications to the police department, cameras and environmental sensors, programmable double-sided LED signage. Funding for this is provided through the adopted FY 2023 CIP Park Lighting and Emergency Notification System project. And based on the recommendation from Century Engineering, I believe purchasing the equipment directly from the manufacturer will benefit the city, saving an estimated $50,000. Since these poles are Intel Streets, a patented wireless disruptive technology, that is a proprietary system. Purchasing them directly through the distributor as the sole source will save the city contract markup pricing. It is recommended that the mayor and city council award the purchase of these poles and equipment for the total cost of $523,725 from Luminaries Incorporated out of Westchester, Pennsylvania, with a contingency of 10% for additional $52,372.50 for an overall total purchase of $576,097.50. I am available for questions.
Any questions from the council? All right, so if the council agrees to move forward.
Hey, I have questions.
Well, I didn't, sorry, I didn't hear you. Here we go, Councilman Cole.
This is a pretty big chunk of money. I know it's in the budget. What's the average lifespan on these poles? How soon will we need to replace these again?
That's a good question. They should, I mean, the current poles that we have up now have lasted since, they've been there about 20 years themselves. And those are kind of antiquated poles. These are much more structurally sound, if you will. So I would anticipate these to be at least 15 years old.
Right. I mean, the technology sounds great, but it's the technology part that scares me. There's more moving parts on these poles. So I was just wondering how soon till we're going to have to do maintenance on all these wireless speakers and signs and all the extra moving parts.
Well, I'd have to defer that to the IT department. I'm not an IT person on that one.
That's all. Thank you.
Any more questions from the council? All right, well, if the council agrees to move forward, we'll award the bid recommendation at the mayor and city council meeting on Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And there being no further business to come before the mayor and city council tonight, this work session is adjourned.